Let's open the book on this. Today in Portland, Volunteers of America, Oregon is permanently closing its Women's Residential Treatment Center after an abrupt service halt earlier this month. I'm Leah, keeping it real and keeping it local in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Garrett, laid back, curious, and ready to dig in. This is Laid Back Local, the news of the day with Leah and Garrett in Portland, Oregon.
First up, Volunteers of America, Oregon, a local nonprofit that runs social services, says it's permanently closing its Women's Residential Treatment Center as of April 16th. The center had already paused services on April 3rd. The group bought a new building in 2021, but it needed heavy upgrades, estimated at $4 to $8 million, and those costs, plus rising operations, pushed the program past its limits. Nearly 50 patients and all staff are affected, and complaints went to the Oregon Health Authority, the state agency that oversees healthcare quality and safety. Insight here. This closure spotlights how substance use treatment facilities face steep financial hurdles. The surprising part is the abruptness. Some patients didn't get stable transition plans, which for folks in recovery is more than a scheduling problem. That's a safety concern, and it raises real questions about oversight and financial planning. Garrett, why do places that serve really vulnerable people end up closing so suddenly instead of phasing out with clear handoffs? It feels like a basic duty of care question.
Yeah, that hits different. Transition of care, a planned orderly handoff to new providers, is critical in recovery because when it doesn't happen, people can fall through the cracks. From what's on the record, the capital upgrades and the day-to-day costs just piled up. Whether it's missteps in planning or, just brutal math, the outcome is the same for patients. Honestly, the timing looks rough. If you buy a building in 2021, those upgrade needs were probably known or discoverable, and it feels like the project's financial runway just wasn't long enough. And that's something to chew on, huh? Because across the region, treatment capacity is already tight. When one site goes dark, the ripple hits waitlists, families, and community safety too. Speaking of budgets and oversight, let's roll on. Next up, Portland City Council held its first oversight hearing to ask why $21 million in unspent housing funds were kept off the radar for months. These dollars surfaced right before a budget adjustment in November 2025. The big picture, under the city's new municipal charter, basically a voter-approved rulebook for how the city is run, transparency is supposed to be front and center. Councilor Samir Kanal, a citywide elected official, chaired the hearing. By law, the city administrator's job includes keeping the council fully informed. But records suggest there were efforts to restrict direct meetings between councilors and city bureaus during budget season. That's a bottleneck. In plain terms, a choke point in the flow of information. Insight. Councilors warned that these administrative blocks could erode public trust, and they worry the council's authority over the budget is getting sidelined. The surprise for me, advising councilors not to meet directly with bureaus about budget priorities is like asking pilots not to talk to the control tower. I mean, how do you set priorities if you can't get unfiltered data?
Real talk. If communication channels are narrowed, the risk is you miss key issues until, they pop up at the worst moment. Garrett, why would anyone think limiting direct meetings makes the process cleaner? It sounds efficient on paper, but in practice it can hide problems. If the city administrator, who's the top manager of city operations, is required to keep council fully informed, then let's set a predictable cadence. Simple fixes, weekly cross-briefs, shared dashboards, and a public log of budget changes. That's transparency you can screenshot. Next up, Portland Public Schools faces a $50 million shortfall for the coming academic year. PPS is the largest school district here, and this gap could mean roughly 288 position cuts and even some school closures. Former board member Andrew Scott, a budget expert who used to serve on the board, says the state's funding system is failing districts. About 2/3 of Oregon's public school funding comes from the state, and the quality education model, the state's benchmark for what schools should cost to run well, has never been fully funded. In March, PPS and the teachers' union agreed to furlough days, basically unpaid days off, to avoid mid-year layoffs, and Governor Tina Kotek issued an executive order telling districts not to cut instructional hours, so the district has to find savings elsewhere. Another curveball. Enrollment is projected to keep dropping until 2035, which complicates staffing and building use.
Yeah, that checks out on the pressures, but it's brutal. Structural revenue reform, meaning durable, predictable streams that match the real cost of running schools, has to be the long game. If the model we use to define quality isn't funded, we end up with larger classes, less support, and constant budget triage. I'm down for solutions that don't just patch a single year. Things like multi-year funding targets, automatic inflation adjustments, and enrollment-sensitive planning. And Leah, if the state is 2/3 of the pie, then the state side has to move in step with actual costs, not just what's politically comfy. Families and staff need stability, not surprise cuts each spring. Next up, the debate over renovating the Moda Center, the arena that's home to the Portland Trail Blazers. The state approved a $365 million package tied to the team staying in Portland, but it still expects local dollars from the city and county too. Here's the tug of war. People love the Blazers, but the economic research on public stadium subsidies is mixed at best. Benefits are often smaller than promised. There's also a power imbalance here. Sports franchises can press cities for deals, but in an interesting twist, moving a team isn't always simple. The Blazers relocating would be hugely expensive and risky, especially when you factor in market realities.
Let's get to the heart of it. With tight city budgets, why put public money toward a renovation before core needs, housing, schools, basic services, are on firm ground? I love a good game night, but we have to see the full equation, including upkeep, interest costs, and who carries the risk if revenue projections don't pan out. Maybe the timing and scale are the questions. What if, instead of a big public chunk, the deal phased work with private dollars leading and community benefit guarantees baked in? Seats at the table for neighbors, transit improvements, and local jobs that last beyond the ribbon cutting. Last up, Portland is moving forward with a new transportation utility fee to keep the Portland Bureau of Transportation, PBOT, which builds and maintains our streets, above water. The fee will show up on residential and commercial water bills starting January 2027. Most households will see about $8.40 to $12 a month. The plan also charges utility companies more for the wear and tear they cause on streets. That's another $20 million a year. In total, the fee is expected to raise about $46 million annually. Council Vice President Olivia Clark introduced it in early April, and in late April, the council voted 10-2 in favor. Mayor Keith Wilson has it in the 2026-27 budget already. Context: PBOT's in a long-running crunch. It relies on gas taxes, DMV fees, and parking revenue, which are all shakier as driving patterns change. There's a more than $6 billion maintenance backlog, and the longer we wait, the pricier it gets. Replacing a failed street can cost up to 10 times more than preserving it now. Supporters say treating streets like a utility makes sense because everyone benefits, and this reduces reliance on car-related revenue, which aligns with climate goals. Critics argue it feels unfair because the fee isn't strictly tied to how much you drive. There are income-qualified discounts for residents and impact-based fees for businesses, but affordability will stay front and center.
I'm all about stabilizing core services, and yeah, roads are as core as it gets. Still, fairness matters. Indexing more of the fee to ability to pay or dialing in strong discounts for lower-income households keeps this from becoming regressive. That's when lower-income folks pay a bigger share of their income than higher-income folks. For businesses, impact-based rates are a start. I'd add periodic audits. If the fee over or undershoots needs, we adjust. Not gonna lie, I like that this leans away from car dependence, but let's pair it with visible wins. Fill the worst potholes fast, fix key crossings, and show progress block by block so people feel the value.
All right, here's where we'll leave it for now.
So there we have it, full circle from City Hall to our streets.
This was Laid Back Local, the news of the day with Leah and Garrett in Portland, Oregon. Join us again tomorrow.
Stay curious. We'll catch you next time.